I've been in engineering and science just about 60 years. I started out as a chemical engineer, gradually moved into physics through atomic physics, I've been through high energy physics, and now I'm sort of in a new part of physics called atom interferometry, which I won't bother you with. What I want to talk to you about is what I've seen in all these years, what seem to be the elements in creativity and innovation in science and in engineering, and I include in that medicine. Creativity is a big word, and all fields are creative. But in science and engineering, we have a particular problem. It's no use being creative if it doesn't agree, first of all, with the laws of nature as we know them. So you must fit into that. And a good example is the old idea of the perpetual motion machine. Why not have a machine that just produces energy just out of nothing? As far as we understand the natural world, that cannot be done. We might be wrong, but then it's a long process to show that you can do it. Okay, so the first thing is you must what you create must fit the laws of the natural world. This is different from art or dance or literature. Second, it has to be feasible. It has to be practical. Because a lot of what one does has to do with making things that the world wants. And as an example of a great invention, which in the end was not practical, is the Concorde airplane. Beautiful engineering, clever idea, not economically feasible by a long shot, and nobody had the least idea how to make it economically feasible. Okay, so that's the first thing. We have to fit reality and economic possibility. Now, what are the conditions to be creative in engineering and science and medicine? What does one have to have? Well, I'm going to be dogmatic about this. You have to be competent in mathematics. It may be that most of what you do has nothing, you don't describe your work by mathematics, but mathematics is the heart of science and engineering. And you just have to be competent in it. If you're not competent in it, you just do something different. I mean, I'm a very slow swimmer. And everybody has different abilities. When I swim in a Stanford pool, I get passed by the young people, young women, and they pass me very easily, and they're only on the kickboard. They're not even using their hands. Now, their ability is in swimming, and I hope other things. Mine is in mathematics. It's just the way nature is. Number two, visualization. You have to be able to visualize what you're doing, both in terms of what it is on the atomic level or the cosmological level. And you have to be able to visualize how you will carry this out, this experiment, this idea. You have to have the ability to visualize, to look both in space in a way and in time. And this atomic interferometry, which I won't it provides a way, for example, to measure magnetic fields very, very well. And I had some thoughts that maybe the MRI machines could be much simplified because we can measure fields so well. But I don't know anything about MRI, and I don't have a visualization path. I don't see how, if I would start what I know now, how I would get there. So either I don't work on it or I've got to find people who know much more than me. So that's visualization where you're going. Next is imagination. Of course, you have to have imagination. And the trick in engineering and science is to start out very broadly and then bring it down to something you can do. And it just has to be there. So if you're not an imaginative person, that's not a field also for you. Okay, now the big rule, and it's tough these days because of funding, is to work in the field of ideas that interest you and to work in the ideas that you have. And that's not so easy when you're young, because how do you get the money? But I've seen it carried out in a very strong way in the end. My professor at Columbia was Isidore Rabi, who also had a Nobel Prize. And although he was very famous, he hated when other physicists came up to talk to him. He didn't want to hear their ideas. He only wanted his ideas, which sounds strange. And if they said, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. So there's when you can, it's not easy when you're young, you work on your own ideas. Finally, face your skills. Some people look into a microscope and see exactly what they're looking at. Other people can never see it. Some people are very good with their hands, and it's particularly, of course, important in the medical sciences. Other people are not. Learn your skills and work on those. Don't try to push yourself into things you cannot do. Now, what about helpful hints in being creative? Okay, even though you're working on your own ideas, pay attention to what other people are doing in your field. Don't think that you have to invent everything yourself. If something has been published in the open literature, then copy it if it's a good technique. If it's patented, see if you can get a license for it. You don't have to do it yourself. And another part of that is respect everybody else you work with. For example, up to recently we were doing a lot of things in big vacuum systems. And in all our meetings as designers, we always had our welder. Because we would say, well, we're going to make this part out of aluminum. And he would say, that's the worst idea I ever heard. I'll never get you a good seal in aluminum in this case. So include everybody who's working with you, because they will have things. Okay, now here's a strange thing, but limit your working hours and limit the working hours of your students. It's very hard. In the US, they're crazy, and everyone boasts, oh, I work 24/7. Now, first of all, the professors all lie. What's their work? They come in, they have their coffee and look at their email, then they have a meeting for an hour or two in which more coffee is brought in. Then they go out to lunch, a working lunch, whatever a working lunch means. I've never understood that. So they lie. So limit working hours. Make the students go off and do things. Finally, teach people who are working in science to be patient with themselves. Things will go well sometimes and badly sometimes. So that's really how to be creative, doing the best you can. Now, I'm going to tell you a sad story. In engineering and in science, most of the ideas you get will be bad ideas. You will get 5 or 10, or if you're unlucky, 20 bad ideas for every good idea. And that's a good sign if you catch it in the end. One of my groups, which is now pleasantly dispersed, we used to meet every Friday afternoon discussing how the experiments are going with coffee and cookies and so forth. And about 4 o'clock, we'd get the most wonderful idea about something we could do with the same apparatus. We would do this. Monday or Tuesday, people would drift back in, faces down. Oh, God, this thing violates Maxwell's equations. It's not going to work. So just be prepared for that. And even the greatest people make mistakes. Einstein, who is the idol of every scientist, and particularly Jewish scientist, after 1925, really had a career. He died of 30 years of mistakes. He refused to pay attention to the new things which were discovered in physics. And his work was mathematically interesting, but it didn't work. Okay. Now, colleagues, find people to work with who are smarter than you, if possible. Okay? And hire people who are smarter than you, because you'll learn a lot more from them. And remember, if a young person does something well, get them all the credit. Call them and say they did it, because then you double the credit. They get the credit, and then you get the credit for having hired them. So you double it. And avoid colleagues who are fast talkers or fast thinkers. They're not good for you because you probably think slowly. Avoid them. Finally, I'm going to stop with the art of obsession in computing, engineering, and science. When you're working on something, you must be obsessed with it. You must think about it all the time. If you wake up at night, don't think about your boyfriend or your children. Think about what you're working on. And don't pay attention to people who say, oh, you've got to read Nature, you've got to read science, you've got to know all this, you've got to understand this and that, and go to the seminar. That is wrong. You concentrate on what you're doing and maybe a few very related things. And obsession is very important. But a day will come, and I'm almost done, when you find out the experiment doesn't work, the device is not selling, the funding has been cut off. Drop the idea. Just drop it. Thank you.